Now, you can go on to a fine establishment, a fine place like DraftKings if you want. And you can go on there and you can find all sorts of peeks into the future when it comes to money-making opportunities. Like, for example, to win the MVP next year, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, neck and neck at plus 550. If you want to look at comeback player of the year, Aiden Hutchinson at 2-1 coming off that injury. Christian McCaffrey sitting at 3-1. And then you can also go to coach of the year, where right now Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson are your current favorites at plus 750 to win coach of the year, which feels like pretty decent return. Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson feels like a pretty decent return at plus 750 if you think those guys are going to be the answer to fixing whatever the mess was there in either New England or Chicago, and they've got the young quarterback to do so. So you might want to jump on that here pretty quick.
This was going to be my question. Is this more about the faith in them as coaches to get both these teams turned back around? Or does it have to do with the roster, or more importantly, their quarterbacks? Because they both have young quarterbacks, promising young quarterbacks. And that's what I really feel like this is about. This is about Drake May, Caleb Williams taking that next step in their second year based off what we've seen so far in their rookie years and having that sort of improvement where, you look at Jay Daniels' season, had a great season. Obviously, there's still room for improvement. But, Drake May and Caleb Williams, if they improve, they've got a little more room for improvement. So it would look like a bigger jump, I guess. And that's what I think these odds are about. It's more about the quarterback play on both those teams, more so than it is anything that Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson will do. And I think the other thing, too, on that note, is that it's a bit unfair that guys like Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni, who you'd say, okay, Sirianni's got some guys who they'll lose, but they've built up rosters. Howie Roseman's done a great job. They'll be right back competitive, probably the favorite to win the Super Bowl or the favorite to at least win the NFC. Same thing for Kansas City. And yet you don't hear Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni's names at the top of these lists. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. I do. To answer the question, I definitely think it has to do with both. The biggest factors are they do have a franchise caliber high drafty quarterback, but it's also the coaching reputation of both that makes them front runners in this scenario. But I just got to be honest with you. When you look at these teams and what they have, okay, I like what the Chicago Bears have. Caleb Williams did not have a bad season. I continue to say that. It's almost like we're looking at Caleb and it's like, well, he could have done better. I don't know how he could have done much better. His numbers are very comparable to Jaden Daniels, who won Rookie of the Year, Offense Rookie of the Year. Now, he's off on a couple, maybe total yards or whatever it may be, but I feel like his stat line was pretty solid. He set a record. He threw for the most yards ever for a rookie quarterback in Bears history. That's not saying much.
It's
Yeah, well, he threw for a lot of yards, but I just don't think that it gets these situations that these two franchises have found themselves in. I don't think the situation gets rectified in year one by either one of these coaches, no matter how good they are, no matter how good Mike Vrabel has been, no matter how good Ben Johnson has called games. You're not going to be in the same situation. Even though you're in the same division, you're not going to be in the same setup that you were when you had the comfort and ability to just call plays in Detroit. So,
but to be coach of the year, there's also kind of an underlying prerequisite for the most part. You had to have sucked the year before. And New England and Chicago both qualified. They were bad the year before. They just fired their previous coach. And so those guys stepping into a roster with talented quarterbacks and with, talented pieces around them, that's why it would make sense. Because if you really wanted to hand the award out for best coach, you could find coaches who had made deep playoff runs. Stefanski won it twice. Well, he won it twice because the year prior they weren't good. And so I feel like the Coach of the Year odds is kind of skewed towards, to Brady's point, like it's a team that wasn't very good, and often the guys, because of you're just used to it or you've got fatigue by it, are kind of overlooked. Because if that was the case, Belichick should have won it 15 times during his run in New England.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem when you have Tom Brady, or if you're Andy Reid and you have Patrick Mahomes, is you never really get all the credit, right? I mean, those players can win MVPs. Those players can win, Offensive Player of the Year awards. But you can't share in that as a coach. Like, that's kind of the crappy thing about it. And I think it's kind of like Phil Jackson. Like, Phil Jackson is obviously a phenomenal coach. And he is because of the success that he's had. But granted, he's had some of the all-time greatest ever. Obviously, Jordan, Kobe, etc.
Sure.
But it's not like that's easy to keep all that together. All the different egos,
That's
everything else that we
That's
heard.
a harder job, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, think about it. I mean, even Steve Kerr with the different, run that they had in Golden State and the different personalities he had on that team.
Yeah.
Like, just because you've got all those weapons, all that talent, all that skill, that doesn't mean they're all going to be able to put it together to be able to equate to success. And there is something to the coach's impact on that. So I don't know. I hate when I see odds like that come out, and immediately we just kind of point and turn to, well, their team stunk last year. They've got young quarterbacks. They just took over these places, so they should see the biggest jump and improvement. It's like, well, okay. I mean, are we just going to discount then teams that end up going 15-2, or a team that goes 16-1? Right? I mean, we wanted to give it to Dan
should have
Campbell.
got it. He should have got it this year. I mean, let's be clear. Dan Campbell, with what he overcame to get to where he was ultimately at, one game away from the divisional championship with all the injuries, I thought it was hands down that Dan Campbell should get it. Now, I get what happened in Minnesota was amazing. I get that. I get in a couple other places is amazing. But Dan Campbell clearly showed a resiliency as a coach. The ability to be able to be flexible and adapt to what his given scenarios were as a coach, and what he doesn't get it. I just don't understand. Again, the whole of the year awards, I'm totally thrown off and confused by the approach of it, by what the voters are looking for and what they want.
All right, so
I guess the point what I'm saying is it doesn't go both ways. We don't look at the MVP and go, he's got a hell of a coach. I mean, should we really, be thinking about that? But we look at a coach that way, and maybe you say it's like, well, because the coach is the one that's going to receive the most, I guess, appreciation from the talent that he has around. That's fine, but he still plays his role too.
Just on the note of odds that you can find for these awards on DraftKings, just like honest question for comeback player of the year. Why is J.J. McCarthy on the list at plus 750? He hasn't played yet in the NFL. He's never took a snap. So what is coming back from what?
Well, he's on a team. He got hurt, and he did play in the preseason technically.
Yeah, but he never played in a regular season game.
He's battling through not playing, Jonas.
Okay,
that's what he's battling.
Anthony Richardson at 35-1. What's he coming back from? Taking a knee and opting out of a game?
Yeah, that is some seriousness, but yeah.
I just I don't know. There's just some of the stuff doesn't exactly.
So there needs to be more of a defined criteria for whatever that is for comeback player of the year.
I think for any of them,
it's too gray.
I think for any of them,
which ought to tell you how great Joe Flacco was, that he won over DeMar Hamlin, who almost died on the field the year before.
DeMar Hamlin was still up for the award this year, correct?
Probably.
I think he was. Come on, man. When has enough time gone by? Will he be up for it next year too?
Residuals,
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Come on.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Because the whole awards, I told y'all, my whole rundown on the awards this year is trash, man. The awards were trash this year, period.